How about this? How about we start with the Buffalo Bills because they absolutely crushed this draft. I love what the Bills did. Absolutely love what the Bills did. Now, just kind of nosing around a little bit, I felt like, okay, they're going to go defensive line or offensive line. But the fact that they get two players with their first two picks, one in round one in round two, that both could have gone in the first round. I'll talk to you about Cody Ford in just a little bit. Like, great job. Great job getting Ed Oliver. Great job getting one of the most disruptive players to come into the National Football League. The Aaron Donald comparisons, while they make me uncomfortable, they're not too far off. Find a way to get this guy on your team. The Bills did just that. And I know there was some like, well, they argued with the Major Applewhite and blah, blah, blah. Okay, yes.
Whatever.
Let's look at the tape. Let's look at him on the field. Let's look at how disruptive he is, knifing through, getting after the passer, closing bursts to the quarterback or to the ball carrier. This is a great player with a great upside as a disruptor. I don't even want to call him an edge or, a defensive line, defensive tackle. Like, no. I just want to call him a disruptor. That's what the D is for with Ed Oliver. Fantastic pick there in the first round at number 9 overall. They stay put. They get one of the 5 best players in this draft, Bloom. No doubt about it. No doubt about it whatsoever. Now, moving on to what else they've done, and that was Cody Ford, as I mentioned, in the second round, a big guard from Oklahoma. And this is a guy that's going to be an earth mover for this team. It's good because obviously you're going to want to run the ball. Hopefully more with the running backs and less with the quarterback. More on that in a second, because in the third round, there is Devin Singletary, running back from Florida Atlantic. And I know there was some debate, even on this show, about like Singletary and, well, he's not the fastest guy, whatever. We know that he's hard charging. Like Singletary runs with a lot of heart. And in fact, there were some pre-draft comparisons, not by us, but some that were saying like there's some LaShawn McCoy to his game. I don't necessarily disagree with that. Now, there's not the speed, the explosiveness that LaShawn McCoy had, but Devin Singletary had over 1,000 yards after contact at FAU last year. So this guy runs with that heart, has that good vision and instincts for running the ball. He's not the fastest guy, but those tools, this line, that team and their mindset, okay, Devin Singletary, I'll be snatching him up in all my dynasty leagues, that's for sure. Dawson Knox, tight end from Ole Miss. Again, one of those, what do you do well type of guys. Let's be an athlete, go out there and make plays as a receiver. We'll see if Dawson Knox can do that for this Bills offense. Voshon Joseph, linebacker from Florida in the 5th round. Jaquan Johnson, safety, Miami in the 6th round. Daryl Johnson, edge, North Carolina A&T. Haven't talked about that since Tariq Cohen, 7th round pick. Like Thomas Sweeney, tight end from Boston College in the 7th round. Overall, how did the Bills do, Bloom?
Oh, so it sees also Brandon Parker, I think, from North Carolina A&T. So they get another player into the draft, I think, for the 3rd straight year. So Bills, yeah, you like that?
Hello.
You see what you like about this again as we go through this. It's a team that knows itself. You may not agree with Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane's blueprint and what they value, but what's refreshing here is they clearly have been given 3, 4, 5 years to build. They're not being judged by the early results, and they're getting to get their kind of guys and build the team that they want to build. And they sweat it out. They got absolutely one of the 5 best players in this draft. Look, if outside of quarterbacks, really, when you looked at this class, there were 3 players that stood out, all on the defensive line: Nick Bosa, Quinn Williams, and Ed Oliver. And Ed Oliver, because Houston was using him as a nose tackle, often taking on 2 guys at the point of attack, you didn't always get to see the productivity that should flow from his amazing set of traits and a motor that runs unbelievably hot. But it's there. This was simple. This was easy. They got a true premium player, a tilt the field to your side of the field kind of player at number 9. It's wonderful. Bills fans should be so excited. And again, I got to mention old Pancho Villa, the Bills Mafia, the great fan base, and how the Bills war room actually went from Pancho Villa's hospice room to the draft in Nashville for him to phone in the 1st round pick. And just to see a team embrace their fans and bring their fans. See, we talked about breaking down barriers.
Right.
How can you break down barriers more than letting a fan call in the pick? And he even said, "What do you think of the pick?" I love it. Ed Oliver, I love it. It was a real beautiful moment. A lot of beautiful moments around the draft. And they were antsy. They didn't trade up for Oliver. They did trade up, a small trade up for Cody Ford. A lot of people would have had him as a 1st round pick. They're rebuilding the whole offensive line this year, basically. I mean, they got Deion Dawkins, and they brought in so many offensive linemen via the free agency, and then they get Cody Ford. Here's an instant starter, guard, tackle. I don't care. You love hearing him say he wanted to go to Buffalo of all the teams he talked to because of Bobby Johnson. Bobby Johnson was under Dave Guglielmo, surprisingly let go by Indy last year. So you're bringing in that good bloodline of the guy who worked for the guy who rebuilt Indy's offensive line. And they did say they were looking to try to trade back into the first, Brandon Beane said, to get Ford. The offer was a little rich for their blood, but they had to show a little patience. So sometimes you get a team say, oh, you want your guy? Here's what it'll cost. You say, not yet. But they still moved up and got their guy. You love that, and it fits the need really well. Devin Singletary. Wasn't the biggest fan of Devin Singletary. And they did say, by the way, McCoy is still the starter. Now, we don't have things can change. I don't think he's going to get cut. I don't think he's going to get traded unless the season is lost and it's before the trade deadline. They're like 1-5 or something like that. But they just looked at this as the best player available. And with Singletary, they loved the way he made people miss. They loved his contact balance. They loved his vision. They loved his lateral quickness. Sal, I can't remember his last name now, Capaccio, I think, up there asked a good question about all the touches he's had and durability. And they said he hasn't actually taken a lot of direct hits. So they feel okay about that. So then tight ends start going. They get nervous and they trade back up, trade 2/4 to get Dawson Knox. And I think they said they were weighing tight ends and running backs at the Singletary pick. And then once they saw the tight end start to go, they felt like they needed to make a move to get Knox. Ultra athletic tight end, playing in the shadow in the passing game of those 3 wide receivers. 2 of them got drafted. DeMarcus Lodge doesn't get drafted and goes to Tampa, but DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, second-round picks. And you see this when you hear the post-draft press conferences throwing a little shade at Ole Miss. Like we thought that there were some things he could do that they didn't use him for. Right. So you see that to move up and take a tight end in the 3rd round had very little productivity. They think he's a 2-way tight end. He had some trouble with durability, but they think they might have got somebody there. They've got and for Joseph, they've got a speedy linebacker. Johnson, another guy that loves to hit. Some versatility there in Jaquan Johnson. Daryl Johnson, he said A&T, edge, developmental edge player. And Sweeney, an end of the roster tight end, a 3rd type tight end, can do a little bit of everything. But Ed Oliver, I don't even care. You got Ed Oliver. You won the draft now. Good job.
You set up Buffalo and the undrafted free agents. Largely, we're going to talk about Tyree Jackson. And Bloom, I'll leave most of that for you. I did see Jackson at the Senior Bowl earlier this year. You did too. So 6'7", big rocket arm, but reminded me of when we saw Logan Thomas there, and everyone's like falling all over themselves. And Thomas got drafted, Jackson didn't, but pay him a healthy bonus. David Steele's wide receiver from West Virginia. Now we have to remember, and I talked to David at the Super Bowl, actually. David was 12 years old when USC offered him as a quarterback. You remember that? This was like a big story at the time, a few years, 2012, whatever it was. And so he was kind of like seen as the guy, transfers to a wide receiver and kind of a technician. So Sills is interesting there. And we'll see the Bills kind of reshaping not only the offensive line, but also the wide receiver group there as well. But a lot of it on Tyreek Jackson. Let's talk about that, Bloom. And I just wanted to bring up David Stills there.
Yeah, Stills is a hyper productive guy.
Work ethic, nose to grindstone type guy.
And can win the ball in the air. Another one of these guys that doesn't necessarily separate, is not a quickness-based receiver. And you see those kind of guys fall. But and they said they had wide receivers on their board they were looking at, and they were watching the board fall, and they were in contact with one of their VP communications or something like that to see whether it was time to take a wide receiver, and the board just didn't fall that way. It sounds like they were very disciplined sticking with their board. So you got Tyree Jackson. Joe Banner said that he just came out of school too early on Twitter whenever I said, I don't know how Tyree Jackson doesn't get drafted. The quarterbacks we see in the 3rd round, we see players like Tyree Jackson at the quarterback position, 3rd round usually, where, you might be able to develop into a starter. He might turn into nothing. The Steelers often take players like him in the 3rd or 4th round at quarterback.
Why did Easton Stick get drafted and not Tyree Jackson?
Right, or Trace McSorley. Like if you think we could turn Trace McSorley into something, you can turn Tyree Jackson into something. Okay, stays in Buffalo. That's beautiful. He actually they said he actually even stayed at Josh Allen's house during the pre-draft process. That's a good sign, right?
That's cool.
That's really cool. So you have him. He maps so similarly to Josh Allen in terms of his size and athleticism, but also, and sometimes you want him to reel it back in. He wants to try to make these spectacular plays outside the pocket, not as skilled at it as Allen was. But what I think you do with someone like Tyree Jackson is you turn him into late career Kaepernick. You don't want him sitting in the pocket and thinking for too long. He does not take on defenses and engage them as like opposite of Haskins, right? Where he's not going to sit back and try to slice and dice you with his arm or his ability, his field vision, and his anticipation. He can run the play as designed. And then once the play is designed, if you exhaust the initial reads, it's not there, pull it down and run. And at least as a backup, what a changeup. Although not necessarily a changeup because that's what Josh Allen was doing last year. But you get it. This is an excellent UDFA pick and one that I'm going to be excited to watch. See, when we go to the preseason watch list, oh man, when Tyree Jackson gets in the game in the preseason, that's going to be fun.
That is going to be fun, and that's going to be exciting. Of course, we'll talk about it like we're going to talk about the Miami Dolphins draft class. Now, you started out round one, Christian Wilkins, one of the most disruptive players in this class, and a player that can be a handful for offensive linemen to deal with up front. And again, one of those Clemson guys that was one of the better ones as well, by the way. And they get him at the 13th pick in the first round. A lot of people thinking maybe they go quarterback there, but yeah, they're waiting for next year to get their guy. And of course, we'll see what that does for Josh Rosen, who has to be involved in this conversation as well, Bloom, as that goes down. Michael Dieter, Delta guard, Wisconsin, another Wisconsin. They love the Badgers. Andrew Van Ginkel. Great name. Isaiah Prince, better name. Tackle, Ohio State. Chandler Cox, leave that one alone. Running back, Auburn. Sorry, Joe. Miles Gaskin, running back, Washington. So they double up on some backs. They trade for Josh Rosen. They get Christian Wilkins. A lot of stuff going on here with the Dolphins.
Yeah, a rebuilding team, and a team that did a lot that could potentially change the course of this franchise. But also, if it doesn't work, they didn't really hamper the course of the franchise. So that's what you really like here. It's a low risk potential franchise changing draft. One of the picks being Christian Wilkins, low risk there. And Wilkins was a late riser. A lot of people had him in the second half of first rounds of mock drafts. He wasn't ever going to make it to Atlanta's number 14 pick. And look, when we watched the defensive tackles in this draft, Quinnen Williams, Ed Oliver, Jeffrey Simmons, who on tape was in the same category as Oliver and Williams to an extent, towards ACL and pre-draft process, excellent pick that fell, I think, to Tennessee, right? And then Wilkins. And Wilkins is huge, athletic. So like we're Dexter Lawrence, who we were panning a little bit, or I was panning in the giant section of the NFC East. Wilkins has a lot more athleticism, disruptive ability, and he's huge and stout. So huge, stout, and athletic. A cornerstone player, a kind of player that you build your defense around. And then they trade down in the second. And when they trade down in the second, by the way, they get New Orleans' second-round pick next year. So just put that in your back pocket. Remember, they also have a fourth-round pick next year in the Ryan Tannehill trade. So already next year, you got an extra second, extra fourth. And then with that pick after you trade down, you get Josh Rosen. And they give up a fifth next year. But that's okay because they got a second and a fourth extra next year. No risk. He's cheaper than most backup quarterbacks anyway. So just from a cost perspective, you're going to let him compete with Ryan Fitzpatrick, which I actually think it's going to be good to be in a room with Fitzpatrick for him. And you start over with low expectations, but also you give him enough time this year. He's in the room with the coaches. Chad O'Shea, remember, this team has a new offensive coordinator, a new head coach. It's the New England system now. Chad O'Shea is going to get a chance to work with him for a year. And then next year, when you're probably picking the top 5, that's not mean, right, Cease, to say that Miami's going to pick in the top 5?
No, and if they're not, use the draft capital they have to move up to one of the real franchise quarterbacks.
And you'll know what you have in Rosen. And if if Rosen is just your cheap backup for the third and fourth year of his rookie contract, that's fine. You only give up a late second round. Teams give up second round picks to get quarterbacks who turn into nothing. And we don't even remember. We don't pan it the same way we pan a first round pick quarterback who turned into nothing. So it's brilliant. Mwah. They waited out the draft. They waited out Arizona. They even traded down once because it was, they're going to trade 48 for Rosen. No, we got an offer to get a second round pick next year if we trade down. So not yet. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And then after that, this isn't necessarily truly a rebuilding draft. Although you get a cornerstone on defense, you get a potential cornerstone at the toughest position to find on offense. And then you get Michael Dieter, Wisconsin guard. See, if I just say to you, a guard from Wisconsin,
I want him.
Yeah, I mean, you need to rebuild this offensive line. Then Ginkel, now that sounds like a future optometrist. He's a developmental edge Wisconsin linebacker. But again, watch Wisconsin linebackers, maybe not as overwhelming as those Wisconsin guards. Isaiah Prince, a developmental tackle. Chandler Cox, fullback. So we're looking for some signs of what Chad O'Shea is going to do. You get a fullback in there, Miles Gaskin, who third down back. He's
Just got to stay healthy.
Yeah, I mean, a guy who can contribute and help fill out your running back depth chart. It's all about Rosen and Wilkins. And Wilkins, they got a solid value for that pick. But the Rosen trade, we may look back, and it may be one of those things that are in this top 10 all-time draft day trades, along with, of course, the Jerome Bettis trade.
Also, with Josh Rosen, he won't be the smartest guy in the room because Ryan Fitzpatrick is a super genius. There you go. Wile E. Coyote. Super genius. Let's talk about super genius undrafted free agents for the Miami Dolphins. I'll talk about Preston Williams, wide receiver, Colorado State. Off-field stuff got him removed from the scouting combine. Didn't go to the Broncos local pro day, but Preston Williams at CSU, incredibly athletic. So maybe in the Hollywood Higgins type of category, which maybe not be great for his pro career, but it's a name I'm gonna keep track of, Bloom, as the Dolphins go through their camps.
Yeah, I'd love some of these guys that they got. Preston Williams first and foremost. And look, from a fantasy perspective, this is a guy you absolutely want to be paying attention to, because this is a player who has that alpha number one receiver profile when it comes time to win the ball in the air, when it comes time to win the catch point. And he's athletic enough to make his size and athleticism really dangerous as a downfield receiver. And it's Miami. Every job is up for grabs for Miami right now. Who does he have to overcome? Devontae Parker to get it? I mean, and this is one of the softest depth charts at the bottom of the depth chart for a wide receiver to make it. So you love this one. They also got Terrell Hanks, New Mexico State. You think of Darius Leonard and what Darius Leonard did. This is a guy who's has got length and speed and range on the field. I was really surprised that he went undrafted. So again, these kinds of players have a chance to make this team. They also got Calhoun, the guard from Ole Miss. This is a guy who was tested in the SEC. A guy who maybe doesn't have all the greatest skills off the snap, but recovers really well. And recovery skills are very underrated in offensive linemen, right? See, we like to watch quarterbacks to say, what do you do when the play breaks down? Well, likewise, for offensive linemen, what do you do when you're beaten off the snap? How can you recover? Can you find a way to get to a spot that saves the play for your team? So he showed that in the SEC. They need offensive linemen. There's a guy that I think can make the team.
I call that angular capture.
Oh, nice.
Throw that in your lexicon and use it. Give me a quarter every time you say it. By the way, let's talk about the Jets up next. The best player in this draft, in my opinion, was Quinnen Williams. So at number 3, which had been for sale for a while, but no takers, the Jets, instead of moving back, they took the best player in this draft, Quinnen Williams. Congratulations. Good job, Adam Gase. Stop with that weird eye thing. Ja'Kai Polite, edge player from Florida, in the 3rd round. There were some mocks early in the process that had Polite going in the 1st round. They get him in the 3rd round. They also get Chuma Edoga, tackle from USC, in the 3rd round. Trevon Wesco, tight end, West Virginia, in the 4th round. Blake Cashman, linebacker, Minnesota, in the 5th round. And Blashawn Austin, cornerback from Rutgers, in the 6th round. So they got the best player in the draft. They got a player that could have been a 1st-round pick in Polite in the 3rd round, and then filled some holes elsewhere. What do you think of what the Jets did? Yeah,
and by Mississippi State for Deion Calhoun. I'm sorry about that. Ole Miss, Mississippi State fans. I don't ever want to mix up those things. Jets, they wanted to trade down. They didn't have a 2nd-round pick. Remember, if we're going to talk about this draft, first we're going to mention they got Sam Darnold last year and traded their 2nd-round pick. They also traded a 5th round. Traded out of the 5th round to get Kelechi Osemele before the draft, and we know that he can play. And we know that these 3rd-day picks where you're giving up 3rd-day capital to get starters where other teams look at them and say, well, he's a little expensive for our tastes. These are usually good trades. The kind of trades that the Patriots make. It always comes back to the Jets trying to be the Patriots, right, Cease? I mean, it never changes. Whatever the Patriots do, we're going to try to do that too. But the Patriots would never be in position to take Quinnen Williams because he took a 3rd overall pick. They didn't trade down. I'm sure they got some offers, but look, this is a player, and I get it. You have some good depth and good players. You've got Leonard Williams, who fell into their laps. You've got Henry Anderson. You've got Nathan Shepard, I think third round pick from last year. These guys are going to turn into good players. So it's a little bit redundant, but come on, Quinnen Williams. And Quinnen Williams, a good example also. A year before this draft, no one was talking about Quinnen Williams. And a year later, he is the number 3 pick. And I don't want to say majority, plurality of folks in the polls had him as the best overall player. Greg Robinson, I'm thinking like Greg Williams. It's all about the Williamses, right? Greg Williams, what do you do with this? How creative can you be? Because you don't have much in terms of edge rush, which we'll get to in a second with their third round pick. But Cecil, did you see the piece that Myles Garrett said that Greg Williams told him like he's only allowed to use 2 moves or something like that on the outside? I don't even want to see you doing this or this. Myles Garrett says, it's going to be nice to be able to do more than that now. So I don't know if Greg Williams is necessarily the best guy.
Just call him Greg Williams, and that way you won't screw him up with a Greg Robinson there. By the way, Quinnen Williams watching film of some guy that worked with Greg Williams called Aaron Donald.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's always a good thing when you get a player like Quinnen Williams. Then they get polite and look, tape-wise, a lot of people had him in the first-round mix going back to January, had him in the mix with guys like Sweat and Burns, and then he had terrible interviews, terrible workout, got hurt. Okay, that's fine. You take that discount in the third round, and what you like for his chances of success are when you're preparing for the Jets defense, you're going to be preparing for that interior pass rush. You're going to put all your resources to slowing down the Williamses, because Leonard and Quinnen Williams can ideally, and again, you add in Anderson, you add in Shepard with energy, and why not put Leonard Williams or Quinnen Williams on the edge, or at least face up on a nose tackle and play around with this stuff. Be creative. Again, Greg Williams is not the most creative. And then you have Polite, who's going to get one-on-one matchups. Maybe even you figure out. So maybe this is the next wave in defense, right? Because you have to learn to use all of these offensive personnel in a versatile way to put the defense off balance. How about using your defensive personnel to put the offense off balance? You scheme ways to get him against a tight end one-on-one. You scheme ways where you know that the running back is going to be looking for inside pressure and he can come around the edge and things like that. Again, Greg Williams, I don't know if he's got to do that, but Polite is the guy to take advantage of that. They get a developmental tackle in the third round, Edoga, who, he has the traits that could eventually translate. They need to rebuild their offensive line. They get one of Matt Waldman's favorites. In the fourth round, Trevon Wesco, he compares him to Chris Cooley, but he's also big. He can play H-back, play some fullback, and just do whatever you want, really. You like this piece. I know they have Chris Hearn from last year, so for fantasy, maybe it's a little bummer if those targets are going to be split. But from an offensive perspective, to have a piece like Wesco certainly upgrades the offense. Blake Cashman, a lot of people loved him, had him as a second or third round pick. Extremely athletic linebacker. Maybe didn't quite play up to his athleticism, but top end athleticism for inside linebacker. They get a lengthy cover corner in Austin, Bleswan Austin from Rutgers.
He's got a knee thing, but he has
to stay healthy. Has to stay healthy, but you get a nice cover corner there. So, you used part of this draft to get Darnold. You used part of this draft to get Assembly, and they traded down. So here's another thing to remember. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. We'll talk about this when we get to the NFC South. The Saints made big moves because they're a team at the end of a Super Bowl window. So the Saints moved up to get Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Now, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who some people had at the end of the first round, ends up being an excellent free safety, nickel back. You can do lots of things with them. Then the Jets may look back and say, well, they should have just taken Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, although they've got their safety position set. They actually have one of the better secondaries in the division, so they were able to trade out of that to replace the pick that they gave up, or the pick they traded out of, and then that turned into Blake Cashman. So we see all these pieces move, but Mike Maccagnan's not sitting back, and this team, while it's not as splashy as Ed Oliver, it's not as splashy as Josh Rosen, still making some moves with the capital they had in this draft that could be franchise chasing.
Mike Maccagnan saying, I'm not Dave Gettleman. So
no,
there you have it. Undrafted free agents for the Jets. When did riding an Uber become blanket? I so want to cuss.
There you want to do it, yeah.
Blankety blank taxi cab confessions. Because my Uber driver in Nashville actually drove Jamie Mosley around. And so you know, I was just picking like, well, what did Jamie tell you? And again, this is from a Uber drive. Totally made it up, but it's just kind of random that
Yeah.
Jamie Mosley was in Nashville. But anyway, I was like, well, where does he want to go? I said, well, Baltimore. You know, that's where CJ was. Blah blah blah. He ends up with CJ with the Jets. So Jamie Mosley, linebacker, Alabama, UDFA. You could bring up Jalen Moore, running back from App State, kind of a lunch pail guy, straight line speed, doesn't stack moves well, doesn't change direction well, in my opinion, and limited as a pass catcher. But undrafted free agents for the Jets, it's a pretty big list. Bloom, who do you like?
Yeah, it is a big list. And again, this is one of the most fun years to look at these undrafted free agents and think about what these teams got, because there's a lot of interesting commodities out there. I think that they got, and you mentioned Jalen Moore. What's interesting about Jalen Moore is that he is a little different than the D'Angelo Henderson, Trenton Cannon, Elijah McGuire types. He is more of a physical downhill back and a good pass blocker too. So that's an interesting thing to watch with Adam Gase and the new offensive staff, and how that depth chart falls out behind Le'Veon Bell. They got Tyler Jones, I think is his name, a good zone guard who a lot of people have draftable. They got John Battle, the LSU safety, and of course they have Jamal Adams there. And you just think of those kind of connections, and Battle some people have drafted. And then Greg Dortch from Wake Forest. Tiny, highly productive. A lot of people had him as one of their 10 or 15 favorite wide receivers in this class. Didn't go drafted. So they get him, and a lot of people will pound the table for him and say they passed the NFL, passed on a player too many times, and the Jets are going to swoop in and profit from that.
New England Patriots, the final team we're going to talk about in the AFC East draft recap here on the Audible. N'Keal Harry, plenty to say there. Back shoulder boss, run off the catchability, no separation. Also takes a ghost step. One thing I asked Mike Pritchard about when we're watching N'Keal Harry, I was like, what's his problem? The first thing he said is like, he takes a ghost step off the line. So going to have to clean that up. And anytime there's like a Patriots little asterisk next to every player, Bloom, because like, oh, well, New England's got him. Yeah, I'm more interested now.
Right.
I'll get to that when I get to two other players as well. Jojuan Williams, cornerback Vandy. Second round, Chase Vinovich, edge from Michigan there. Damian Harris, one of those other players. Damian Harris, I thought, would go in the second round. He goes in the third. Okay, and he goes to the Patriots. All right, he's buried right now, and I wrote about him yesterday on a Footballguys newswire. Make sure to subscribe to our daily newsletter. It comes out hot and fresh for you every morning with all the latest NFL news. I wrote about Damian Harris yesterday, and I was like, he's buried, but in dynasty leagues, I love it because it's New England and they're going to know what to get. You get that Saban Belichick connection there. And Harris is a talented player, maybe not Mark Ingram, Alabama levels, but Patriots will be able to get something out of him. Yannick could just tackle West Virginia in the third round as well. Jalti Froholt, guard Arkansas next. And then Jarrett Stidham, fourth round pick, Auburn. That's another Patriots asterisk. And I like Jarrett Stidham. Jarrett Stidham a year ago, when you do the 2019 mock drafts a year ago, Jarrett Stidham was in the first round. He goes to the fourth round because of his final year at Auburn. Didn't really take that next step, but it's a Patriots bump. And not that every quarterback they've drafted has turned into gold or anything, because they've had plenty of Kevin O'Connells, like all that. Like, I get that. But Jarrett Stidham, okay, I'm going to watch. Brian Cowart, defensive tackle, Maryland, fifth round. Jacob Bailey as well, punter, Stanford. Kendarius Webster, corner, Ole Miss, to round things out for the Pats.
So this team Bill Belichick never sits tight during a draft. He never is comfortable. We'll see you take the best player on the board or pick. He's always making moves. You saw the move up to get Jojuan Williams. You saw them get that extra third, trade down, and give up a little bump up later to Chicago. They end up getting Harris with the pick. They get Chicago's 2024th. They're moving, always having clarity. And again, this is a pick team where you look at the picks and you look at the coaches they have and the kinds of players they've been able to make more out of than other teams. Harry, I'm a bit out on an island here, and I get it. The Patriots make the most of what they have. I just don't know. Harry is good after the catch and good at the catch point. And I know that Josh Gordon and Rob Gronkowski made those kinds of plays for Tom Brady last year, and Gronkowski for his whole career, of course. But that's not a big element in the Patriots offense. It's not something that Brady does as a calling card of his game as a quarterback. Really, it's not a game, a calling card shouldn't be a calling card game any quarterback in the NFL. So I wonder, and Patriots, of course they make the most out of wide receivers in terms of trades when they traded for Randy Moss, but some of those, they're hit and miss with their wide receiver evaluation. So I'm still a little skeptical, but at the catch point, after the catch, Harry is a guy with skills. I just don't know if they're that important in today's NFL. Williams is long and aggressive. Another one that is more of a cover 2 type corner. Maybe he translates as a safety. Not the greatest straight line speed. And also I want to point out, if DK Metcalf becomes the man for Seattle, they traded out of that pick with Seattle. So I don't know what they would have done at 32, but they could have passed on Harry and Metcalf would have been there.
I'm not going to put money on DK Metcalf being the man. That's just me.
Yeah, well, either way, it's just something to note that they traded out of that. And then you look at the rest of these picks. So could just the tackle from West Virginia, and again, getting out ahead of this, a young tackle project for Dante Scarnecchia, where he could end up being one of the 5 best tackles in the long-term starter with coaching. That's what he needed. That's what they got. Froholt, a guard center swing guy. Remember, he's from Denmark. Okay. He started out on defense at Arkansas, and again, give this guy to Scarnecchia. Probably is going to turn him into a starter. So they get these starters on the offensive line. Stidham, I wasn't a huge fan of, but he's one of these prospects where his 2018 tape and his 2017 tape tell different stories. After 2017, you say, well, he's got the arrows pointing up. The arrow wasn't pointing up on 2018. The Patriots see something. As you said, Cecil, it changes what we think of a player when they take them. Going back to the 3rd round again, because they had so many picks. Trace Winovich, a try-hard guy, sort of a poor man's TJ Watt, a try-hard, productive guy. They know how to get the most out of those kind of players on the edge. Damian Harris, a good all-around running back. There's not really a hole in his game, but there's not anything in his game that he's the best at in this class. Look, Sony Michel's already missed time twice. From a fantasy perspective, Sony Michel has already missed time twice in his career in 1 year. If Michel misses a game, Harris is going to get the goal line carries. Harris is going to get the finishing the game carries. Harris is going to get those bread and butter carries. As while the league is going more pass, which the Patriots did like to the Steelers back in the day, the Patriots are saying, we're going to run. And we're going to run, and you're not going to stop us. So Harris fits right into that. And they got him at a very reasonable cost. Cowart is more of a developmental defensive tackle. Jacob Bailey. So next time you say a team is stupid for taking a punter, well, the Patriots did it. So, they got a punter who can sky the ball, didn't have any long returns against him in college, can kick the ball 60 yards effortlessly. So, they see that Jacksonville point of view back when they took Brian Anger in the 3rd, that the punter can be important. Always an interesting draft. And see, every time we look at the Patriots draft, it's like, it makes sense to Bill. It doesn't always make sense to us, but in 2-3 years, it will.
Let's just play word salad, Bloom, as we wrap up this show.
Sure.
If I were to just toss out the words like 7th rounder or undrafted, toss out the word wide receiver,
right?
Toss out the words agile, run after the catch,
right?
Super quick,
right?
You would be interested, right?
Right.
That's Ryan Davis.
Yeah, exactly.
Ryan Davis from Auburn, one of Jarrett Stidham's favorite targets. Now there. Is this the next Julian Edelman? I don't know, but we're fixing to find out. I'm interested.
Yeah, I'm interested. And see LSU back Brissett. There's
there you go.
And these LSU backs, because of how excellent the quality of running backs they get, often can make it. They got Beck, an H back. Anytime we see someone with that H back, full back, tight end versatility, the Patriots make good use of those players. And look, not as dynamic after the catch as Ryan Davis, but another slot type, Jacoby Myers from NC State, very dependable, very disciplined as a wide receiver. And then they got Malik Grant from Marshall, a hitter, a box safety. A lot of people had him as draftable. So, of course, it's the Patriots. Of course, you're going to have undrafted free agents that we think have an NFL future and can make this team.
That is a wrap for the AFC East here on the Audible as we count down our NFL draft recap shows. Many thanks to you all for watching on our YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, comment on the videos. Thank you very much. Also, thanks for subscribing on iTunes and listening to us there. Sign up for our free Football Guys daily newsletter written by me and Bloom and our boss, Joe Bryant. So check that out daily, on the daily, our Football Guys free daily newsletter available at footballguys.com. Follow Sigmund Bloom on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. Follow the show at the Audible. Follow me at Cecil Lammey. And as always, stay tuned and stay blankety blank frosty.